Aloha! Welcome to 3 Levels of Enlightenment. This is program 1.6, a continuation of the 2012 reversal of the direction of rotation of the planet Earth. This is the 5th program involving Earth. The first program in this series was about the imminent reversal of rotation of direction of the planet Mars. Then programs 2 through 6 today have been about the reversal of the planet Earth. These programs are sponsored by the United Galactic Federation of Planets, or UGFP, as you can see in front of me. My name is Merlin, and I'll be your tour guide. In the first 5 programs at this level, we had a long introduction, a disclaimer of sorts, and in the disclaimer I explained how these programs are sorted. We have 3 levels. This is a level 1 program. We also have level 2 and level 3, and I explained that we have signs that indicate the level. Today is a level 1, it's a PG-13, so nobody should be offended by anything offered in this program. I'd like to thank all the other websites out there in YouTube land and in Google land. I've been posting these programs on YouTube, and several companies have actually picked up these programs and included them in their websites. So thank you, folks. I've had some real nice compliments, and we're getting lots of hits. We are once again coming to you from the Gilbert Ray Campground here in Tucson Mountain County Park in Tucson, Arizona. On my right is my good friend Roy, and on my left is his partner Dale. Roy and Dale are giant saguaro cactuses that we find here in the campground and the park. This will be our last program from Gilbert Ray Campground. We've now finished the series on the reversal of Mars and Earth, and we will be coming to you from other areas in Tucson. This program also marks the beginning of shows without the disclaimer. In past shows, I've always provided a warning for people about what programs they might be offended by. The disclaimer took 10 to 12 minutes, and since we're posting these programs on YouTube and are limited to 15 minutes per program, we're eliminating the disclaimer from this point on at level 1. Before we get into our main subject of today's program, earthquakes, I'd like to talk to you about the effects of the predictions about 2012 on the general population. There has been a lot of misinformation put out about what's coming. A lot of it has been to terrify people, including a very fascinating movie that came out in November of 2009. The movie's called 2012, and in the movie they show enormous waves of water passing over the earth. The promo for the movie, the preview, shows a Tibetan monk watching this huge wave of water coming over the top of the Himalayas, the highest place on earth, and he starts banging the gong at his monastery to warn people, but there's nothing they can do because this water virtually destroys the planet. In the movie, and I hate to give away the plot, but only 400,000 people survive, and they're only the rich people, the smart people, and the people from the government. Everybody else perishes. The rest of us 7 billion, all drowned. Well, no, that's not how it's going to happen. And unfortunately, this creates more hysteria in the population. We're all going to survive. All 7 billion of us are going to survive 2012. It's nothing to fear. Do not let movies or popular media scare you. Something good is coming. A more positive outlook for 2012 is this book called Fractal Time. This was written by Greg Braden, who's an author over in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and the book is entitled The Secret of 2012 and a New World Age. In this book, he prophesizes that we all do survive and that it begins a new era for mankind on planet Earth, but unfortunately, that's not what the facts tell us, the geology tells us. But his research is excellent because he looks at all the different cultures and civilizations that have prophesized something coming in 2012. So I would recommend this book. Let's now get into our main subject of today's program, earthquakes. Last year, the year 2010, was definitely a year for earthquakes. In January of last year, Haiti had an enormous earthquake, and they were unprepared for it, so hundreds of thousands of people died, and people are still homeless. There's millions, in fact, that are pretty much out in the open in Haiti, and they've now got all kinds of problems with crime and diseases and whatever you would expect when you have millions of people that lose their homes. That was in January of 2010. Later in the year, there was an earthquake in Chile, down in South America, and then after that there was another earthquake in New Zealand, over on the southwest side of the Pacific. Then this year, 2011, as most of you can still remember, I hope, Japan had a massive earthquake, and it also included a tsunami. And as our papers told us, there was devastation in Japan. This is the Arizona Republic, one of our local newspapers, and it shows the tsunami, the tidal wave that came in off the ocean over Japan and destroyed entire cities. The earthquake and tsunami severely damaged the Fukushima Daiichi power plant, nuclear power plant, that's located 200 miles north of Tokyo. Unfortunately, the government of Japan tried to downplay the dangers of what was happening at the plant, and some people may not have been evacuated as quickly as they should have been. Plus, the fallout from the nuclear power plant affected the rest of the world. There were actually radioactive particles showing up on the west coast of America. Milk from some of the cows on the west coast was contaminated with radiation. And the sad part is, when a major disaster of this sort takes place, governments often try to hide how bad it really is. A similar example is the meltdown of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in the former Soviet Union. The first indication of a problem was in Norway, 1,000 miles north, when radiation detectors started picking up radioactive particles. Well, the winds were coming up from the south, and they were actually blowing the radioactive material from Chernobyl all the way up to Norway. And it finally forced the Soviet Union to admit that they'd had a major meltdown of that plant. In the process, the plant nearly went through what they call the China syndrome. There was a movie that came out about the same time, a few years earlier, starring Jane Fonda and Michael Douglas and Jack Lemmon. And in that movie, a nuclear power plant on the west coast of California nearly had a meltdown. And the name for China syndrome is when these nuclear power plants get out of control, the nuclear fuel rods actually heat up to a temperature that's so great that they start melting their way down through the floor of the plant and down towards the center of the earth. And with China on the opposite side of the earth from, say, California, the theory is the fuel rods could work their way all the way to China. So they call it the China syndrome. In the case of the plant in Japan, they were finally able to get it under control. But in the process, many of the workers at the plant may have sacrificed their lives, just like in Chernobyl. The workers in the former Soviet Union, in some cases, were forced to go back to the plant and try to shut things down. They became fatally exposed to radiation, and they died not too long after that. The sad news in Japan is that the same thing may happen for those workers. So nuclear power plants and earthquakes and tsunamis are a bad combination. And this 9-point plus something earthquake in Japan is a classic example. This now brings us to a very sobering possibility. The earthquake in Japan was said to be the strongest earthquake in recorded history. So we've had a series of earthquakes all around the earth that are the greatest that have ever been recorded. The earthquakes are becoming more and more powerful. Well, there's something else involved here. We had an earthquake in Chile, in South America, in New Zealand, in the southwestern Pacific, and now we've had an earthquake in Japan, in the northwestern Pacific. If you look at the globe of the Earth and look at the Pacific Ocean, it's bordered by 4 continents. South America is on the southeastern side. Australia and New Zealand are on the southwestern side. Japan is on the northwestern side, which then leaves the last continent. Japan is part of Asia, you might say. North America is the 4th corner. And we have had 3 major earthquakes in 4 of those continents: Chile, New Zealand, Japan. They call this the Ring of Fire, or the Rim of Fire. It's a very active volcanic area all around the Pacific. It's around the perimeter of the Pacific. And if we've had 3 earthquakes in 4 of the continents, it stands to reason North America is going to have an earthquake. And California may be as vulnerable as Japan. The reason is the nuclear power plant in Japan was designed to withstand an earthquake up to a magnitude of 8.0, but Japan had a 9 point something. Well, the same company built nuclear power plants in California. California has 2. One is Diablo Canyon, which is located between Los Angeles and Monterey. The other one is San Onofre, which is located between Los Angeles and San Diego. Both of these power plants are right on the ocean. And from what I've heard, these plants are designed to withstand up to an 8.0 earthquake. But we're having 9.0 earthquakes all over the planet. They're becoming more and more powerful. And those 2 nuclear power plants in California sit right on the ocean. So if we have a 9.0 earthquake, there will be a tsunami, and those plants will be hit. And if you can imagine the consequences of 2 plants in California being destroyed, like the 1 plant in Japan, it will be horrific. Those plants are upwind of everything else in America. The nuclear fallout from either of those plants would coat the entire United States, the lower 48 states. Well, maybe the lower southern tier of the 48 states, depends on the wind directions. But for California, it would be absolutely catastrophic, and for the rest of the country, it would also be catastrophic. Well, we've seen how governments do not like to admit how bad things really are. The Soviet Union wouldn't say anything about Chernobyl until they got caught by the folks up in Norway, and then finally they admitted, yes, we've had a meltdown. And we've seen in Japan how the damage was twice as bad as the government officials were willing to admit. So governments do not like to tell their people how bad things might really be. And as a warning for people of America, if that 4th major quake hits North America and our 2 nuclear power plants in Southern California get taken out, don't believe anything the government tells you. They will lie. They will try to make it sound like no big deal. It is a big deal. Whenever a nuclear power plant is destroyed, is severely damaged, everybody is in trouble. Run. Run as far and as quickly as you can. You do not want to be downwind of that plant. Now let's look at the effects of these megaquakes on the Earth itself. During Christmas of 2004, there was an earthquake in the Indian Ocean. And it was like the earthquake in Japan earlier this year. The earthquake caused a tsunami that washed into India and Indonesia and other countries and killed hundreds of thousands of people. And the problem with these tsunamis, with these tidal waves, is that you can't get away and you can't try to outswim them. In Indonesia, when people die, they automatically do an autopsy, and they had a lot of bodies to autopsy. And the people that were killed in the tsunami did not drown. They were killed by impact. In other words, in the water, as it's moving, everything gets picked up. Cars, park benches, picnic tables, everything. And they're rolling around in the water. And if you get mixed up in that, you get killed by being slammed by objects that are big, much bigger than you. And nobody drowned in those tsunamis. They were killed by being crushed. You never ever want to be in a tsunami or in a tidal wave. You will get smashed. Run. Run as fast as you can. Kind of like a tornado. Figure out which way it's going and go 90 degrees to it. Get out of its way. You don't want to get wrapped up in it. But the Indian Ocean earthquake was so violent that the scientists believed it caused the Earth to wobble. They said that an area of ocean floor 500 miles long under the Indian Ocean dropped 50 feet during that earthquake and created this enormous tsunami. And the action was so violent, the scientists think it caused the Earth to wobble. Then, in the Japan earthquake of this year, they also thought that the action was so violent, it may have caused the Earth to wobble. Well, what are we talking about here? We know from geology, from salt, from yardangs, from iron particles and lava, from the reversal of the poles, that we have an event every 15,000 years. And in the process, the Earth has to come to a full stop and then go back the other way. And as that event approaches, we should start to see symptoms of that event. We've had a collapse of the magnetosphere. That's this enormous field that surrounds the Earth and in some ways protects us from solar radiation. It is collapsing. Well, maybe not just the magnetosphere is being affected. Maybe the Earth is starting to tell us that she's getting ready to hit the brakes. And this wobbling is not caused by the earthquakes. It's the other way around. The Earth is wobbling, and then we have earthquakes. In 2004, when the ocean floor dropped that 50 feet over 500 miles, maybe that was one of the first indications that the Earth is getting ready to come to a full stop. When the Japan earthquake hit and the Earth supposedly wobbled, maybe it was the other way around. Maybe our Earth is telling us that she's getting ready to come to a full stop. And as the time approaches, she's going to start making all these wobbles, getting ready for the big moment. So earthquakes are not causing the Earth to wobble. The Earth is wobbling and causing earthquakes. As we talked about in the first program at this level, the program entitled The Imminent Reversal of the Direction of Rotation of the Planet Mars, I tried to explain how harmonics may be the energy that's causing these events to happen. And we used as an example the planet that should have been between Mars and Jupiter and is no longer there. It's the asteroid belt. It's a whole bunch of pieces. And the story may be the gravity, the power of Jupiter was so incredible that every time this little planet passed Jupiter, a vibration was set up in the planet, and eventually the vibrations got to be so great the entire planet exploded, just like the glass exploded in the Memorex commercial with Ella Fitzgerald. Harmonics, sound, can have enormous power, and that may be what happened to that little planet between Mars and Jupiter. Well, the good news for us is that we don't have a Jupiter for a sister. So none of our sister planets can blow us apart, but maybe the harmonics that we impose on each other causes this reversal of rotation, causes us to stop going counterclockwise and start going clockwise. Well, harmonics involve sound. There actually is a sound component in harmonics. And in the next few months, leading up to Christmas of next year, leading up to 2012, December 21st, 2012, we may start to hear sounds on this planet that we have never heard before. These are the harmonics that are going to cause us to stop going counterclockwise and start going clockwise. So keep your ears out. See if you start hearing sounds like you've never heard before. They will probably be very deep sounds, something unusual, kind of like a grumbling sound. But if you hear them, contact the news media. Start telling all these networks that you hear something strange is happening. And for those of you in the media, listen to these reports. Take them seriously. People won't be imagining things. These sounds are part of the signs of something coming. Something coming on winter solstice 2012. 30 years ago, back in the early 1980s, my family and I were involved in a study conducted by the University of California. We had a bunch of chickens, we got fresh eggs, and in this study, they wanted us to watch our animals for any signs of unusual activity just prior to earthquakes. Apparently, animals have a much wider hearing range than we have, and just prior to earthquakes, the fault lines sometimes give off a very deep sound that animals can hear, and animals will start acting very strangely. So, University of California did a study to see if they could use animals to help to predict earthquakes. I'm not sure what the final results were of the study, but it was a great idea. There was also a movie that came out some years back starring John Travolta called Phenomenon. And in the movie, the John Travolta character develops some, you might say, superhuman powers. And in one of the scenes, he's able to hear a coming earthquake. And he actually calls the University of California down in Berkeley. I believe the movie took place somewhere up in Northern California, north of San Francisco. But he told the scientists, expect a certain magnitude quake. And then sure enough, they had one that got the attention of the scientists, who then came up to talk to him to find out what he knew. And he said he could hear the sounds down deep in the earth that would signal an earthquake. Ultra deep rumblings of sorts. Well, the animals hear that. We can't. And if your animals start to act weird, maybe it's time to get out of the building. Now, if you're in the building, you got to get in the door frame, because as buildings collapse, one of the strongest parts of the building are the reinforced areas. If you're out in the middle of a room, it's going to come down on top of you. But if you go into a door frame or under a strong desk, you may survive. But if you have enough time, run. Run for the door. You will feel much better if you're standing out in the open, away from any kind of building. And even if the building starts to fall on you, it's going to take a few seconds before it hits you, and you'll have time to run even further away so you don't get crushed. And for those of you that are working offices, you might just get a parakeet or have some kind of bird or some animal. I guess birds are one of the best indicators of earthquakes, but parakeet, parrot, cockatiel, whatever, put him in your office. And if he starts acting strangely, everybody run. Get out of the building. For those of you that live in buildings where escape to the outside is virtually impossible, either because there's too many people that are heading for the exits and you'll be trampled by the stampede, or because you're too high up in the building and you won't be able to get down the stairs or the elevators in time, then there is another possibility. Now, if you're in a high-rise building that's got a steel frame construction or steel and concrete construction, it's been engineered to withstand major earthquakes. And hopefully it'll survive these monster earthquakes that have already started and are coming. And hopefully your building will survive. But if you're in a lower tech building where you can't get out, then what you might do is just build yourself earthquake protection. Now here's a stack of 4x4s. This is Doug fir. These are 4x4 in size, and these are used inside of our walls to make our walls strong. You can buy this at Home Depot or Lowe's or any other hardware store. What you want to do is to get 4 4x4s. Now, this is a miniature. This is a model, in a sense. But you put those 4x4s in the corners of a coffee table or an end table or a kitchen table or whatever you want to use it for. But you use those as the legs to support the top surface. And then the top surface you may want to make with 4x4s as well. But it's something you can build very simply. If you make 4x4s both horizontally this way and vertically, and then put a surface on top of it, it may survive a collapse of a portion of a building. And you get underneath. As the earthquake begins, as your parakeets start squawking like there's no tomorrow, that's the time to get underneath this thing. And if you make it as a coffee table, make it long enough so you can stretch out under it. If you have a family, make it even bigger. Maybe make a ping pong table out of these guys, or a kitchen table. But if you make it really strong, it will be like standing in a door frame. And it may be able to survive the collapse of whatever's above you. But you want to use 4x4s, something nice and thick and nice and strong, because it'll take the impact, it'll take the weight, and you may make it. And you got to realize there's more earthquakes coming, and they're getting more and more powerful. Every earthquake keeps getting worse and worse. So prepare. No place is safe from earthquakes anymore. Haiti had a massive earthquake last year. Hundreds of thousands of people died. Millions of people are now homeless. Haiti doesn't have massive earthquakes. Everywhere is now vulnerable. So regardless of where you live, anywhere on this planet, expect an earthquake and build yourself some protection. Ounce of protection worth a pound of cure. So I want to encourage everyone to try to survive these coming months as our Earth wobbles her way towards 2012. Things are going to get pretty hairy, but you can make it because you want to be here for the crossings, for the departures to Alpha Centauri, and you want to survive these next few months. Earth is going to be wobbling. She's getting ready for that reversal, but don't let it affect you. Protect yourself. Don't get caught in an earthquake and get crushed. You want to be here. You want to go to Alpha Centauri, which will be the jumping off point. It'll be like Ellis Island back in the last 2 centuries. 400,000 people a year came into the United States from Europe and got processed at Ellis Island, and then they went out and ventured all over America. Well, Alpha Centauri is our Ellis Island. We will first go Alpha Centauri, and then from there, we get to travel the galaxy. It's going to be the most incredible experience in the history of humanity. You want to be here. You need to survive these next few months. Don't get killed in an earthquake, in a tsunami, or in a nuclear meltdown. Stay away from those nuclear plants and their fallout. So with that, I'd like to wish you all aloha and a hui ho. Until next time.